Welcome to the clay head demo. First, you're going to tear off a little piece of your clay and set it to the side so that you can use it for your extra things you want to add. Next, we're going to section the clay into 2 equal chunks and roll. So use your hands to really hit the clay. We want to make sure we don't have any air trapped in our clay because air expands in the kiln and can cause our piece to explode or crack. Now, anytime you see wrinkles in the clay, that could potentially form a new crack, so we don't want that. You want to smooth it out anytime you see that. Step 2, we're going to make 2 pinch pots. You're going to press your thumb into the center of the chunk, and then you're going to hold your other hand kind of like a crab claw, and you're going to make a pinching gesture with your thumb and the rest of your hand. You're going to gently turn the clay in your non-dominant hand while you pinch with your dominant hand. Again, anytime you see little cracks forming, make sure you're smoothing those out. We don't want air to get caught up in the clay. And at this point, you're just turning and pinching. You don't want to squeeze too hard because you don't want it to get too thin. Ideally, your pinch pot is going to be the thickness of an Oreo cookie. Every now and again, you'll give it a little tap on the table because you want to create a nice flat surface around the lip so that your 2 pinch pots are more easily able to be joined together. And be careful how hard you push with your thumb. You don't want to create a weak spot or a thin spot in the bottom of your pinch pot. But you can see I'm using my thumb to just smooth and even out the inside of this pinch pot. Again, the smoother the better. Some of you will have a tendency to pull too hard and your bowl will get kind of shallow and thin, but you just want to gently pinch and turn at the same time. It should be about the size of a tennis ball or a baseball if you cut it in half. And again, looking for any wrinkles to smooth out with your fingers while your clay is in this plastic phase. Okay, now I'm going to double check. The pinch pots look like they're about the same size, so we can join them together. If not, you can always just force it to be a little larger. Step 3, we're going to score and slip the edges of the pinch pot. Now, scoring means to rough up the edge with a sharp object. I'm using a fork. You want it to look like the rough side of Velcro. This is going to help clay stick to clay. So again, I'm scoring the edge of the pinch pot. There we go. Now the slip is in the red container. Slip is dried clay that's been rehydrated with water and kind of mixed together. It's the consistency of like a Wendy's Frosty. You're going to want to think of slip as glue. We're going to use it to fuse the 2 halves of the head together. So you can use a tool or you can just dip your finger in, which is what I'm doing. Get some slip on your finger. You want it to catch in all those grooves of the scoring. Your hands will get a little messy. All right, once you've scored and slipped both sides, we're going to put the 2 pinch pots together to form the head. So you'll have a nice, shallow, hollow space. Give them a little push, a little pressure. Not too hard, it is hollow. Now to help this seam bond with itself, I'm going to come back in with the fork and rescore. It's going to look like an angry baseball seam. But again, I'm helping clay stick to clay. I don't want this to fall apart. Ideally, once the 2 pinch pots are formed together and then smoothed, you won't know where that seam is. So I'm going to take some of my extra clay. I'm going to roll it between my palms to form a snake. I'm going to use this to put around the seam of the pinch pots. First, I'm going to give it a little smush. and score it up. Again, like Velcro, rough clay will stick to rough clay. Now I like to hold it so that seam is kind of in line with my body. Add the clay on. I'm going to hold the pinch pots in my hands, and I'm going to use my thumbs, kind of smush and smear that seam of clay. Again, by the time I'm done with this, you won't know where that seam was. It'll just feel like one solid hollow shape. And this helps us later on in the kiln. It'll help it dry faster. There's less of a chance of air being trapped. We are poking a vent hole. And it makes your project considerably lighter to be hollow. Thus using less clay, it's less expensive. All good things. So again, just going back with my thumbs, smoothing it out. Once you're happy, now step 5, sculpt the face by squeezing and shaping the clay. You can do a lot of the sculpting just with your fingers. Your hands are an excellent tool. Now again, anytime you want to add clay on, we have to score and slip. So I'm adding extra clay onto the front so that my character has a very distinguished nose. And I'm using the head of a pencil to kind of add nostrils and eyes to the piece. Now if you want, let's say your character has an open mouth, you can cut all the way through to the center because your piece is hollow. And that would be considered your pathway for air to escape. If yours stays like mine, where all of the sculpting is on the surface and there's no hole, then during step 7, we'll add a vent hole. Again, adding some ear details. All of this is designed to add details and texture. I'm creating kind of an old man head. Old men have nice big ears. I've added a nice big nose. There's the other ear going on now. It doesn't matter what I try to sculpt, it always turns out a little old man. Now give him a little personality because he is a character. And you'll want to think about what gives your character personality. How do I know what they're thinking? What they're like? Now I just changed the shape of the eyebrows and added a little hair detail so he can look a little grouchy. We can see his expression through his mouth and eyebrow shape. Oh, maybe he wants a monocle, I don't know. Trying something new. If you don't like it, you just pull it off, roll up the clay, and try again. This time around, I'm adding a mustache, again scoring and slipping. And there's the final head. Now when we get to this point, you have to really think about what is the function of your head. Mine has a big enough nose you might be able to rest a pair of glasses on his face, but maybe yours has an antenna or space for pencils. Either way, if you do not have a hole anywhere in the head, you need to poke a vent hole for air to escape. About the width of a pencil is just fine. And in the bottom of your project, you're actually going to scratch all 3 of your initials so that we know whose is whose when it comes out of the kiln. But at this point, he's pretty finished, and he's going to sit in the kiln room on the counter for a week until he is completely bone dry. That means he'll be cool to the touch, and he is going to be slightly lighter in color, closer to the color of that slip lid. That's how I'll know that all the water has evaporated. Because water in the kiln expands, which creates cracks and possibly explosions. And we don't want that. You can also add a little iron oxide to your piece at this point, which will effectively work as rust. And so if I painted it across the mustache and the eyebrows, they would become slightly darker in color once it goes through the bisque fire. It's totally up to you. But at this point, he's pretty finished. Once again, make sure you're scratching all 3 of your initials on the bottom nice and clean and clear so we can read them. And you're all done.